You learn a few things when you live long enough around outlaw roads. One of them is when not to look back. Because if you're riding a dark stretch of Pennsylvania highway, and those Harley engines roll up behind on your ass, and in your mirrors you catch that flaming Norse giant, sword raised high, that's your warning. The Pagans Motorcycle Club doesn't wear symbols for decoration. They wear omens. That patch on their backs, Surtur, the Norse fire god who burns the world to ash. That ain't mythology. That's a promise. In the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, there are the big four: the Hells Angels, the Outlaws, the Bandidos, and the Pagans. Law enforcement consistently calls the Pagans the most unpredictably violent of them all. They were never the biggest club, with a fraction of the membership of their rivals. They weren't always the loudest, often operating in the shadows, but they earned a reputation for being the most dangerous. And tonight, I'm going to tell you about the 5 men who forged that brutal legacy. Men who didn't just lead a club, they ruled an empire of fear. It didn't start that way. The Pagans were born in 1957 in Prince George's County, Maryland. Just 13 bikers, wearing denim jackets and riding British Triumphs. There was no criminal empire, no bloodshed. It was about brotherhood, iron, and asphalt. But by the 1970s, the freewheeling spirit was gone. They weren't a club anymore. They were a highly structured criminal organization. Unlike other outlaw clubs that operated with democratic votes, the Pagans centralized all power. At the top sat the Mother Club, a council of 13 men. There were no votes, no democracy. Orders went down the chain of command, and violence went out to their enemies. They also stayed fiercely American, refusing to establish overseas chapters. There would be no dilution of their power, just tight control, and even tighter discipline. This rigid top-down structure made them ruthlessly efficient. And in the outlaw world, efficiency is deadly. In the brutal hierarchy of an outlaw motorcycle club, there are leaders who strategize and there are soldiers who fight. But every criminal empire also needs a man who turns cold decisions into visceral pain, a figure whose very name is a weapon. For the Pagans Motorcycle Club, that man was Floyd Jesse Moore, the national vice president. Known simply as Jesse, he was the club's iron fist. Moore wasn't a talker. He didn't need to be. His reputation for unhesitating violence spoke volumes. He was the guy you sent when talking was over, when the only language left was fear. As national vice president in the early 2000s, Moore ran West Virginia like occupied territory. This was a critical time for the Pagans, who were aggressively expanding their influence against rivals. Moore's job was to ensure that expansion met no resistance. When smaller independent clubs stepped out of line or refused to pay tribute, Moore didn't negotiate. He corrected. His corrections were brutal, public, and designed to send a ripple of terror through the entire region. In 2003, a member of the Road Disciples Motorcycle Club was savagely beaten in a bar. This wasn't a random brawl or for sport. It was a calculated act of strategy, a piece of violent theater orchestrated by Moore. The man was deliberately sent back to his own club, bleeding and broken, carrying a simple, non-negotiable message: submit or disappear. Moore used fear like a precision tool. It was psychological warfare. Unannounced visits to rival clubhouses, quiet, menacing conversations in parking lots, clear ultimatums delivered with the unspoken promise of annihilation. His ruthlessness knew no bounds, not even prison walls. If you were suspected of cooperating with law enforcement, Moore would personally plan your death, even while he himself was already behind bars. From his cell, he conspired to murder an inmate he believed was an informant, even plotting to bribe a prison guard with thousands of dollars to make it happen. That's not rage. That's not passion. That's cold, methodical calculation. The business of power. His reign of terror ended in a massive federal RICO sweep that dismantled his power structure. But the blueprint he left behind, the doctrine of violence as policy, became embedded in the Pagans' DNA, a dark legacy that would never go away. In the brutal world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, power takes many forms. Some men rule with the raw, intimidating force of their fists, settling disputes with violence and fear. But a select few, the true strategists, understand a different kind of authority. They rule with firepower. J. Carl Wagner was one of those men. He understood a fundamental truth of warfare better than most. Whoever controls the weapons, controls the future. For Wagner, this wasn't just a motto, it was a doctrine. So when federal agents finally moved on Wagner, surrounding his unassuming Maryland home in 2007, they weren't taking any chances. They knew the man they were dealing with. They didn't just bring SWAT teams, they brought a bomb robot, anticipating a house rigged with deadly traps. Their caution was justified. Inside, they found a meticulously organized arsenal, dozens of handguns, assault rifles, and enough raw explosive material to wage a small war. This wasn't the chaotic horde of a paranoid collector. It was the calculated preparation of a military mind. Wagner was the Pagans' national sergeant-at-arms, their quartermaster. He was the man who made sure every chapter was armed, supplied, and trained for battle. At the time, rumors swirled that a full-scale war with their bitter rivals, the Hells Angels, was not just possible, but imminent. Wagner was getting ready. He supplied the weapons, he taught the tactics, and he ensured the Pagans weren't just feared on the streets. They were a militarized force, ready to defend their turf. When Wagner fell, the Pagans lost more than just their guns. They lost their chief strategist, their armorer, their shield. The club was left exposed, its teeth pulled just when they believed they needed them most. Violence keeps power, but money sustains it. That's what David Barbados Bart understood. As national president, he transformed the Pagans into something else entirely. A criminal enterprise, raffles, motorcycle giveaways, cash moving through hands like smoke. On paper, fundraisers. In reality, money laundering. Barbados absorbed smaller clubs instead of crushing them. Protection became dependence. Dependence became control. He didn't lash out. He planned. Even murder conspiracies were business decisions. Remove informants, protect revenue streams. When the feds finally came, it wasn't for violence. It was for structure. And that's the most dangerous kind of criminal, the one who thinks. This is where things turn modern. Christopher Lamar Baker wasn't fighting for territory. He was moving kilograms. Between 2019 and 2021, Baker flooded the East Coast with meth, hundreds of kilos. His operation ran like a corporation. Supply chains, distribution, security, and discipline, that was enforced with torture. A pledge stole from the club. Baker ordered his fingers cut off with a table saw. That wasn't punishment. That was branding fear into everyone watching. Baker ordered executions over bad deals, carried machine guns, laundered millions. When he was sentenced to 75 years, the message was clear. This wasn't biker crime anymore. This was organized narcotics warfare. Every empire has a founder. For the Pagans, it was John Satan Marin. Before Marin, the Pagans were bikers. After Marin, they were predators. He absorbed rival clubs, merged enemies, expanded relentlessly. Violence under Marin wasn't emotional, it was strategic. Kill enough people, the right way, and you don't have to kill as many later. He built the Mother Club, centralized command, insulated leadership. Even from prison, his design held. Everything the Pagans became, every tactic, every expansion, every act of terror traces back to him. Marin didn't just lead men, he built a machine. These 5 men weren't anomalies, they were evolution. From fists, to guns, to money, to drugs, to terror as policy. That's the Pagan way. And while faces change, the blueprint remains. Because in the outlaw world, power doesn't come from noise, it comes from fear. And no club understood that better than the Pagans Motorcycle Club.